Hey lifers, Dustin here, and here we are. The next to last college football playoff committee's top 25 poll has just been released, so it's time to take a look at it and see what the playoff picture looks like in the week heading into conference championship week and the ultimate 2017 poll, which will come out Sunday at noon on ESPN. So going into this, we'll figure out what may need to happen. I did do a video earlier this week on kind of a playoff update. You can check that out right there in order to figure out what teams need to happen probably and what are the best chances to get in. The things I was most looking forward to in this poll is where would Auburn versus Wisconsin be ranked, which I was a little bit surprised by, but not really the more I thought about it. Where Alabama and Ohio State are ranked, because those are the two wild cards coming into this weekend. Depending on what happens, one of those two teams could kind of get back into the top four. Without any further ado, let's look at the committee's top 25, then I'll show you my top 25, and then we'll put those two top 25s in the AP side by side and kind of show you where they fit in. With number 1 and number 2 losing last week, it was going to be interesting to see who they had on top of the pile, and at number 1 they did have Clemson, moving up 2 spots. Auburn at number 2. I was wondering if they would be behind Oklahoma, but the committee saw fit to put them up at number 2, which is probably even more reason why Clemson, even with the loss to Syracuse, is up at number 1. Oklahoma 3. Undefeated Wisconsin, the only Power 5 undefeated team sitting there at 4. Just in the wings is Alabama, who needs probably Ohio State to beat Wisconsin to get in, sitting there at 5. They dropped 4 spots. Georgia at 6 is in with a win against Auburn. Miami at 7 is still probably in a win against Clemson this Saturday, but being at number 7 isn't probably where the Hurricanes expected to be or wanted to be. Interesting, at number 8 is Ohio State. Is the win against Wisconsin, a team that, even though they're undefeated, the playoff deems as number 4 behind a 2-loss team and 2 1-loss teams already, is that enough to catapult the Buckeyes into the top 4? I am not sure about that. I figured they would probably be 6th in this poll. They ended up being 8th. Not the strongest endorsement from the committee right there. Penn State and USC round out the top 10 as the only 2 teams with no shot to get into the college football playoff at this point. Number 11 is TCU. That is way further down than I think the Horned Frogs wanted to be. That's way further down than I think they should be if they expected to have a shot to get into the playoff. Leapfrogging a Pac-12 champion in either Stanford or USC, which they are kind of sandwiched in between right now. And I don't know, I just don't see it happening even with a win against Oklahoma. The highest they probably would finish is about 6th. You do have the 2 Pac-12 teams right there at 10 and 12. Washington at 13. UCF at 14. That's still way too low, committee. I don't understand what they're looking at. Are you telling me you don't think UCF could beat Washington? Because I think they could. Do you really not think UCF could beat Stanford or USC? I think they could. I'm not saying they would beat them every single time they played, but I certainly don't think they would not beat them if they played 10 times. You know what I'm saying? That's ridiculous. They are the highest. Group of 5 team, Memphis is down there at 20. The winner of that as the only 2 group of 5 teams in the top 25, other than number 25 Fresno State, which is not ranked last week, means that the winner of the American Conference will be in a New Year's 6 game, probably in the Peach Bowl. Notre Dame's late game loss to Stanford drops them 7 points down to 15. Michigan State stays steady at 16. LSU at 17. Washington State only dropped 5 after the dismantling that Washington put on them at 18. Oklahoma State, Memphis, Northwestern. Virginia Tech moves up 3. Mississippi State drops 9 after losing Nick Fitzgerald and then the Egg Bowl. And NC State also jumps into the top 25 after being not ranked last week. Dropping out of the committee's top 25 is Boise State and South Carolina. The way the conferences stack up, the SEC and Big Ten each have 5 apiece, which leads all conferences. Pac-12 and ACC have 4. Big 12 has 3. The American has 2. And then there's Notre Dame and Fresno State. In my top 25 poll, I had Oklahoma at 1. Their only loss was to Iowa State. They do have a win over Ohio State. I think them and Auburn are probably the 2 hottest teams in the country right now. And they did not lose to a team that's not going to a bowl game, unlike Clemson. I do have them above Wisconsin, speaking of Clemson at number 2, because of the Auburn win and the eye test. I do think on a neutral field, Clemson would beat Wisconsin right now. But Because they are undefeated, I do give the Badgers the benefit of the doubt and move them up 1 to number 3. I have Auburn at number 4. I'm just keeping them there because the teams above them have no or one loss. I have to put them ahead of Alabama. I have to put them ahead of Georgia. With Miami's loss to a not great Pitt team, I slid them down. I do have Ohio State at 6, moving up 3 spots after the win against Michigan. A tough win that they had to do a lot of the second half with a backup quarterback in order to win that game. So, you know, the way the top 4 works at this point, it doesn't really matter where you are, as long as you're in the top 4. So me and the committee and the AP all have the same top 4. We just have them ordered a little bit differently. I weigh 2 losses. You know, they were up 20-0 against an LSU team that lost to Troy and lost that game. I think that matters. I think losing to Clemson, even though I don't think either of those two teams are the same team now, and if they were to play now, I think the final score would probably be 41-38 instead of 14-6. Their loss still matters, so I do still have them, even though they're hot right now, I do still have them down to number 4. Penn State at 9. I do have UCF sneaking into the top 10. That jumped them up 2 spots. The win against USF was a really fun game, really good one to watch. Their body of work, they're undefeated. They deserve to be in the top 10 at this point, in my opinion. TCU, then USC, Washington, Stanford, LSU moving up 7 spots. Basically, that's because of the Auburn win, and they fired A&M's head coach, so I moved them up. Oklahoma State up 3, Notre Dame down 9 after the tough loss to the Cardinal. Memphis, Northwestern, Michigan State, kept Northwestern ahead of Michigan State because they beat them. Virginia Tech, Miss State, South Florida, I did keep ranked after the tough loss to UCF. Washington State, I dropped back 6, and I also had Fresno State at 25. 2 of their 3 losses are to Alabama and Washington, and they beat Boise State in their first of 2 meetings in 2 straight weeks with the Broncos. Their only other loss was kind of a weird, fluky loss to a 5-7 UNLV team that probably should not have happened looking back. The only team I had dropping out of the top 25 was Boise State. The committee doesn't do a next 5 up, but if I had my next 5 up, it would be FAU, Michigan, Missouri, NC State, and Boise State. Now, if you look at all 3 of the polls side by side, in green is where either me or the AP had a team ranked higher than the committee, and in red is where we had them ranked lower. If they're in black, obviously they're exactly the same. So, for instance, all of us had Alabama ranked to number 5. And then in the AP poll, what's really interesting is I always put the votes right off to the side. This is the most split that I've seen the AP poll in a really long time. Honestly, this may be the most split I've ever seen it. Number 1, Clemson had 27 votes for number 1. Number 2, Oklahoma had 24. And Wisconsin had 10 votes to be the number 1 team in the country. Kind of crazy. We all had the same 9 teams, I believe. Georgia, Miami, Ohio State, all kinds of in different orders. They have TCU at number 10. The committee has USC. I have UCF. And then USC, UCF kind of switching down there. What are some other ones? I have Stanford ranked a little bit lower than they do. I have Washington State ranked a lot lower than both polls do. I have down there at 24. Me and the AP poll have South Florida finally ranked. The committee does not, but they do have NC State, which we do not. So we all have Fresno State at 25. So it all stacks up fairly kind of the same, but with a few key differences here and there. So that's it for the top 25 for week 13. Let me know down below your top 25, specifically your top 6 going into Conference Championship Saturday. If you don't want to do the full 25, I understand. You can just give me your top 6 based on where they are right now, not projecting into this weekend, though if you want to do that in a comment kind of after that, that's all perfectly fine. This will not be the last top 25 video I do. I'm closing out this week a lot of the videos, like the Heisman Watch and the Eliminator, but the top 25, I will do one for next week, kind of my post-conference championship top 25, and then I will do one at the very end of the year, just for poops and giggles. I don't know how to say that in a friendly, ad-friendly kind of a way, I guess that works. But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching this series all year. It has meant a lot to me. Sorry I didn't always get it out in the most reasonable amount of time, but I always try to do my best. Thank you for posting your top 25s down in the comment section. I read pretty much every single one. If I heart it, I read it, and I always like to give a little bit of like, really, this team? Or, hey, I agree with that, whenever I can. So definitely make sure to leave those down below as well. And I'll be doing a live stream. I should have said this at the beginning of the video. Maybe I will. I will be doing a live stream Sunday morning. starting at 11 o'clock, I think, 11 or 11:30 Eastern time. The results come out on 12 o'clock, at 12 o'clock. So I want to do that with you guys so we can watch the final top 25 together if you want to join me at about 11 or 11:30 Sunday morning. So definitely make sure to stay tuned for that. And now I'm just going to cut to the outro because I feel like I'm rambling. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. You can also click the circle right there in order to subscribe or watch any of the other videos over there to the right that YouTube has suggested for you. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, until next time, 25, and then we'll put those two top 25s in the AP side by side and kind of show you where they fit in. With number 1 and number 2 losing last week, it was going to be interesting to see who they had on top of the pile. And at number 1, they did have Clemson moving up 2 spots. Auburn at number 2. I was wondering if they would be behind Oklahoma, Wisconsin be ranked, which I was a little bit surprised by, but not really the more I thought about it. Where Alabama and Ohio State are ranked, because those are the 2 wild cards coming into this weekend. Depending on what happens, one of those 2 teams could kind of get back into the top 4. Without any further ado, let's look at the committee's top 25, then I'll show you my top 20. Hey lifers, Dustin here, and here we are. The next to last college football playoff committee's top 25 poll has just been released. So it's time to take a look at it and see what the playoff picture looks like in the week heading into Conference Championship Week and the ultimate 2017 poll, which will come out Sunday at noon on ESPN. So going into this, we'll figure out what may need to happen. I did do a video earlier this week on kind of a playoff update. You can check that out right there in order to figure out what teams need to happen probably and what are the best chances to get in. The things I was most looking forward to in this poll is where would Auburn versus, but the committee saw fit to put them up at number 2, which is probably even more reason why Clemson, even with the loss to Syracuse, is up at number 1, Oklahoma 3. Undefeated Wisconsin, the only Power 5 undefeated team sitting there at 4. Just in the wings is Alabama, who needs probably Ohio State to beat Wisconsin to get in, sitting there at 5.